जय हिंद एंड वेलकम टू डेफ टॉक्स। नमस्कार, डेफ टॉक्स में आपका स्वागत है। सबसे पहला शो जो हम लोग इंग्लिश में करेंगे। एज आप लोग सब देख रहे हैं, मेरे साथ हैं मेजर जनरल राजीव नारायणन, जो हमको बताएंगे दुनिया में हो क्या रहा है। यूक्रेन की वॉर की जगह में पूरी दुनिया बदलने वाली है। क्या होने वाला है इस दुनिया के अंदर, ये हमको समझना पड़ेगा। सर, थैंक यू सो मच, आप आए एंड यू टेकन आउट सम टाइम फॉर मी। बड़ा ही देयर बहुत अनसर्टेनिटी है आजकल। हो क्या रहा है कुछ समझ नहीं आ रहा। लोग एक तरफ कुछ बोलते हैं, एक तरफ कुछ बोलते हैं। वेस्ट में तो अलग ही कुछ एक चल रहा है। रशिया का अलग नैरेटिव चल रहा है, चाइना अपना कुछ कर रहा है, हम लोग अपना कुछ कर रहे हैं। सो बहुत ही डिफिकल्ट सिचुएशन है, डिफरेंट सिचुएशन है। ओपनिंग में क्या कहेंगे सर आप?
देखो, मेन थिंग दैट इज हैपनिंग इज दोनों साइड ने जितना लड़ना था लड़ चुके हैं। अभी अब विंटर आ रहा है। शुरू में रशियंस ने मापने में कि व्हाट विल बी द रिस्पांस फ्रॉम द यूक्रेन बहुत गलती कर दी थी, बहुत बड़ी गलती कर दी थी, और अपना एफर्ट डिसिपेट कर दिया था। क्रक्स उनका यही था कि जो ईस्टर्न एरियाज है, जिसको अभी उन्होंने अपने टेरिटरी में डिक्लेयर कर दिया है दी सो कॉल्ड रेफरेंडम करके, एम था कि क्रीमिया के साथ लैंड लिंक उनका बन जाए। वो उसने बना दिया है। अगर यही पर्पस था तो मेन एफर्ट यहीं पे आना था। बाकी तरफ कीव में जाना, यहाँ जाना, वहाँ जाना, हाइप कर देना कि भाई जेलेंस्की इज यूजलेस कैरेक्टर, नाट सब पूरे यूक्रेनियंस को नाटसी बोलने देना, ये तो मतलब हाइप था। दूसरे साइड अगर जाओ, अभी यूक्रेनियंस के डोंट हैव एनी मैन पावर लेफ्ट वर्थ इट सॉल्ट। 1 लाख से ऊपर मर चुके हैं उनके सोल्जर्स, और 3 से 4 लाख के करीब, ये अमेरिकन फिगर्स है जो मैं बता रहा हूं, अमेरिकन डीओडी के फिगर्स हैं। ये शुरू करे थे 5 और 6 लाख के बीच में, इनके पास फाइटर्स थे। 1 लाख से ऊपर तो मर चुके हैं, और 4 लाख के करीब इंजर्ड होके आउट ऑफ एक्शन है। अब आप अंदाजा लगा दीजिए क्या लड़ सकते हैं। वरी इज मिलिटेंट्स कमिंग इन आउट देयर। रिपोर्ट्स है कि टर्की जो है इज सेंडिंग आईसिस फाइटर्स देयर। रशियंस ने तो पहले ही अपने वागनर ग्रुप को भेज दिया था, और उनके मर्सिनरीज ग्रुप बनाए थे उन्होंने, रिटायर्ड उनके ऑफिसर्स एंड सोल्जर्स के साथ, तो वो तो वहां पे हैं। दे आर सेंडिंग देयर कोसैक्स, दे आर सेंडिंग द चेचन्स। हथियार इतने मात्रा में वहां पहुंचे हैं, देयर सो मच ऑफ स्मॉल आर्म्स वेपन्स। The Americans don't know who have them. The Russians also have been getting it through China, through Iran. They also have no clue who all have got those weapons. Now that spells danger. Will it spiral out of control into a uh, terrorist war? The manner जिस तरह से लिबिया तो कम, सीरिया और इराक में हो गया था, अफगानिस्तान में हो गया था। If ISIS is being brought in up, remember Turkey is a member of NATO. Now, is NATO sending in the ISIS fighters? Then I am reminded of what Hillary Clinton had said to Musharraf, that if you keep poisonous snakes as pets in your backyard to bite your neighbor, it's not always the neighbor who's bitten. So this is where the war is at present. It is restricted towards those four, as the Russians call it, the oblasts, the 4 provinces. Most of it is with the Russians. Rest, the battle is on in.
झगड़ा चल रहा है।
हाँ, नहीं, वो झगड़ा भी बहुत कम है, छोटे मोटे जगह है वो। the media hype is there. Oh ho, we have one big victory. एक गांव पकड़ लिया, वहां पे 50 गांव में से तो it's nothing. When you see the actual maps which come out even from I2S2 and others, that where the progress is, in fact, today morning I keep in the morning, every day morning, the first thing I do is look at the map. What is the progress of battle? It's generally the same, not much of a difference, essentially because the Russians have also suffered very heavy casualties, which the Russian side is not uh, telling. But the fact that he ordered the mobilization of reservists is a telling statement. And 3 lakhs means it's a telling statement that he has also suffered casualties. Now he wants to escalate using General Winter. So he knows Europe is going to face General Winter. So he now wants Western Ukraine to face General Winter. Eastern to face कर ही रहा है. Western. So he is targeting the energy and your electrical grid.
ठंड तो
So
हो गई
that,
है सर ऑलरेडी.
so that is no. He's once you destroy it, to maintain that destruction, you time it again, and repeated hits you have to do so that it can't be repaired. Okay, so this is where the problem is. Sustenance for both sides, as I see it, is a problem for your war materials. Ukrainians are also having a problem that you're giving them HIMARS, you're giving them everything, but the system requires sustenance, because when you have do heavy use of the equipment, damage will take place. It's a mechanical thing. Either a mechanical damage will take place or a damage will take place because of the hit जो उसको लड़ाई में टूट जाता है, या तो दुश्मन के फायर से टूटता है या टेरेन के वजह से टूट जाता है, तो उसको रिपेयर कैसे करोगे? When your factories have got destroyed, क्योंकि ईस्टर्न यूक्रेन was where the bulk of the factories were. Your factories have got destroyed. There, now he has to recoup and start sending weapons and equipment. The Russians also, they have also suffered casualties in their weapons and equipment. That is why you find, I'm surprised that he has not deployed his armata as yet. He is recouping these old T-72s and T-62s and then renovating them, improving their sustenance capability in the field to take a hit, and deploying them. 800 of those. Then that's a telling statement. If you're doing 800 tanks, that means the casualties you have also suffered. So now winter is coming, it's going to be petering out, and it will be interesting to see what happens. कि winter के बाद क्या होता है? The public, when you cannot deliver public good, फिर क्या होगा? Especially Europe and EU. बताते नहीं हैं. Though IMF says they are facing recession, I don't know what is recession. If you don't have food, you run out of vegetable oil, नहीं है, तेल नहीं है आपको खाना बनाने के लिए, wheat नहीं है आपके पास, मैदा बना के ब्रेड खाते हैं वो सब, मैदा बनाने के लिए वो नहीं है आपके पास, you don't have oil and gas, your complete heating is based on gas. गैस को जला के तेल को गर्म करके आप हीटिंग करते हो, वो है ही नहीं आपके पास. You claim that my reserve stocks are there. Reserve stocks are reserve stocks for an emergency. It's not meant to oversee the whole season. It's meant for short-term emergency to overcome and recoup. कि भाई आ जाएगा. कैसे? If you look at UK, if you look at France, the common man doesn't have anything, and the same situation is there in US also, and the common man is getting hit very badly. Inflation is double digits or touching double digits everywhere. क्या करेगा वो?
सर यही तो समझ नहीं आता है, बिकॉज यू नो जर्मनी स्पेशली, आई मीन उससे शुरू करते हैं, बिकॉज जर्मनी का जो द इंडस्ट्रियल बेस जो सेटअप हुआ है इज बिकॉज ऑफ द चीप रशियन गैस दैट दे वर गेटिंग. आई मीन
टू थिंग्स, नहीं दो चीज
प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी
थी।
वाइज।
एक तो रशियन गैस, बिकॉज दे बिकेम द हब।
जी।
सेकंड एंड मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट, इट वाज द नेटो कवर। तो
टेक्नोलॉजी
उन्होंने,
कवर।
ना नेटो का डिफेंस का, सिक्योरिटी का कवर था। सो ऑल दीज कंट्रीज एक्सक्लूडिंग फ्रांस टू अ लार्ज एक्सटेंट, उन्होंने अपना डिफेंस एक्सपेंडिचर बिल्कुल ही काट दिया था। तो जर्मनी ने तो ऑलरेडी हाथ खड़ा कर दिया है कि मेरे पास और देने के लिए
इतने
कुछ
हैं।
है नहीं, देयर नथिंग लेफ्ट। बिकॉज इफ यू लुक एट द बुंडेसवर, द जर्मन मिलिट्री, है क्या उसके पास? फौज ही नहीं है। एक
हार्डली
आध
कुछ।
उसके पास टैंक का बटालियन है, एक आध आर्टिलरी का बटालियन है। आई थिंक अबाउट टू टू ब्रिगेड्स और थ्री ब्रिगेड्स वर्थ, दे हैड गॉन इनटू ब्रिगेडाइजेशन की, डिवीजन नहीं चाहिए, ब्रिगेड चाहिए। तो तीन चार ब्रिगेड है जिसमें से एक या दो ही डिप्लॉय कर सकता है। जहाज भी कुछ है नहीं, शिप्स भी एक दो ही हैं। तो क्या है? अब बोल रहे हैं सब कि हम 2%, हमारा परसेंट ऑफ माय जीडीपी में डिफेंस में स्पेंड करूंगा। तो वो तो आज बोला है यार, वो तो 10 साल बाद आपको नजर आएगा कि क्या आया है। इमीडिएटली 2% बोलने से सब कुछ तो नहीं आ जाता ना। आपके डिफेंस इंडस्ट्री से आपको खरीदना है। डिफेंस इंडस्ट्री शुड हैव द कैपेसिटी कि भाई जितना आपको चाहिए मैं बना के दूं। आप इतने साल, 2-3 डिकेड्स आपने कुछ बनाया
कुछ
नहीं
नहीं
है,
है।
एंड सडनली टेल देम कि भाई बनाना शुरू करो। बंदे कहां से लाओगे? वेयर इज द ट्रेन्ड मैन पावर? नो, आई मस्ट टेल यू वन थिंग, एंड ये काफी पहले से शुरू हो गया था। लाइक आई वाज डूइंग माय स्टाफ कॉलेज 91 92। When I was doing the staff college, we had two British officers who were doing the course with us. Midway through the course, the British indicated to them that 25% of their force were going to be demobilized. Okay. There was an artillery officer and ASC officer. ASC of, and when we used to meet them, the wives were of the artillery officer was most worried. She said, मेरा husband तो सैंडर्स से है, वो तो ग्रेजुएट भी नहीं है. He is not a graduate. If we go
करेगा
out
क्या?
to pasture, what will we do? Nobody will touch him. As far as the ASC officer was concerned, he was a graduate entry into their army. She said he has no problem. He's a logistics expert. There is a lot of logistic experts required for movement of trade resources. He will still get the job if he's demobilized. What will my husband do? He only knows artillery and he's not even a graduate. And this is, I'm talking 91, 92. So you can imagine the problem those people face. कि just saying कि मैंने बढ़ाना है doesn't happen. You need to train your manpower. You need to train, give them experience. केवल recruit level या academy level training से नहीं होता ना. Where is the experience? You don't have. Why do you think the Chinese are poaching the retired British pilots and other pilots through South
आई मीन
Africa? Because what they have also done, which I'm sure when they look at the Navy also, you will find similar thing. ये तो मेरा 100% मेरे को ये शक है कि वो नेवल वालों को भी ले रहे होंगे, क्योंकि
आप पायलट गए
सडनली,
तो
नहीं, suddenly when you increase the number of platforms, like from the time Xi Jinping has come, the number of platforms, whether it be the Air Force, whether it be the Navy, has just expanded. Especially the Air Force, they are wanting it to be very well modernized and doing away with the old aircrafts, getting new. You haven't trained them on that. Your trainers don't even know much about these aircrafts. And they must be taking people from the naval air force also, naval air arm also. Aircraft carrier में fly कैसे करेंगे, land कैसे करेंगे? What are the problems? Same is the problem EU will face. फौज चाहिए तो कहां से? बट अगर हम एक कदम पीछे ले जाएं, you see, the problem I find is slightly different. 2014-15 onwards, EU was not keen for NATO to continue.
Hmm.
Okay, because they were leaning more and more towards Russia for their gas, or
Yes,
even
and
today, oil, gas, your
fertilizers,
vegetable
food.
oil, fertilizer, wheat, corn, your minerals,
भर
your
के सामान आता है सर.
even no, no, even your enriched uranium, even US gets it. Enriched uranium, everything comes from them.
वो ही नहीं है ना सर. That's the only thing which is not there in the sanctions.
But oil and gas, moment you freeze his assets and you say you will not trade with him, oil and gas तो वो कह रहा है तुम रूबल में दो, तुमको दूंगा, नहीं दोगे नहीं दूंगा. And the biggest problem US has, so before I come to the problem US is facing now because of this, is they were not keen on a multipolar world. US is not keen कि भाई multipolarity आ जाए. The polls that were coming, US was one, EU would have been the other, China is there, India was rising, you had Russia was always there, and so their group of alliances which were coming up, and you felt these multipolar blocks would come up. Even if EU did not come up, France and Germany were coming up independently with their independent line, and that was one of the reasons in Germany that Angela Merkel had to go, and so she went, and Scholz has come and created, now they're
He
facing the
told the
problem.
line. वो
Yeah, he
जाता रहता
towed
है
the
साथ में.
line,
हाँ.
and you're facing the problem. So by doing what he did and orchestrating, I call it, there is a term which the for what the Russians, Soviets were very great masters at. It's called reflexive control. Reflexive control means I will not tell you what to do. I will create situations and mold you in a place where you will decide and do exactly what I want you to do. And this is a classic example of a US reflexive control forcing Russia to attack Ukraine using Zelensky. Okay. They never were, if you think US has any interest in getting Ukraine into the EU or into NATO, forget it. They also know that Ukraine is run by oligarchs. Like Russia, Ukraine is also run by oligarchs. But the problem in Ukraine is there are two separate oligarchs, west of Dnieper and east of
East of
Dnieper.
Dnieper. West
West
is
are Catholics, East are Orthodox, have
Orthodox.
more leanings towards Russia. So you have two sets of oligarchs who are controlled by two different sets of people.
People. Hmm.
And that is where the clash has taken place, which has been orchestrated. So the Americans have actually nothing to do. They are not interested. Otherwise, Ukraine would have joined EU long, long, long ago. When Yulia Tymoshenko had won first time
हाँ.
round,
Hmm.
तभी आ
Hmm.
जाते. क्यों नहीं
तब
आए?
से सर झंडा लगे तो तब से घूम रहे हैं लोग ईयू का.
वो तो घूमते रहो ना, वो तो देगा नहीं तुमको कोई एंट्री. टर्की भी कब से घूम रहा है अंदर घुसने के लिए,
8 साल
कितने
हो गए सर.
सालों से. डिस्पाइट बीइंग पार्ट ऑफ नेटो, टर्की को नहीं दिया है, इसको भी नहीं मिलना था. बट ऑल दिस आई फील, my understanding is, was orchestrated for this, to force the hand of EU. EU today cannot intercede anywhere in the world. पैसे खत्म है. So
सर बट
Indo Pacific उसने तोड़ दिया. Little realizing two things. He is looking towards a Cold War 2.0. Whether he may say yes or no, but he is looking at a Cold War
yeah.
2.0. He with Europe and other allies on one side, Russia and China on the other side.
Other side.
That he is looking at. But he is making 2-3 fundamental mistakes. global interdependence. No, आज के तारीख में the global interdependence of all the countries is enormous.
Absolutely.
In the sense that while you may call it a nation state, no nation state is sovereign. A literal meaning is of sovereign is you're independent to take your decisions. But if you're dependent on somebody else for your economic development and growth, एनर्जी बाहर से आता है, खाना बाहर से आता है, तो any policy decision made there impacts you. Then you're not sovereign.
हाँ.
Then you're not sovereign.
Correct, correct.
In the olden days you were, now no. You had colonies, so you had your oil, gas, minerals, everything coming. So you're not. While the sanctions may have worked earlier in the 90s, the kind of interdependence today is enormous. So quite some time ago, one of our ambassadors, L. Rangarajan, had written a beautiful book on negotiations and conflict control. And he had made out a chart, and this I'm talking is 80s, when the push was taking for globalization. And he had coined the phrase covariance of rewards. Okay, negative and positive covariance of rewards. In the sense that there will be a negative and positive impact always when you are interdependent. My policy will impact you, your policy will impact me. How much does it impact is the covariance, the difference. The difference in the levels of impact on you and me. That difference is called covariance. If the covariance is large, negative, you go towards conflict. If the covariance is less, then you have what is called an anta, that you agree to live together कि हाँ भाई है ये, but चलो
कर लेते हैं.
इतना भी गंदा नहीं है, I can manage. So this is one point. Second major point which the Americans did not think about, because sadly we don't have statesmen today in the world, is a what is it called, Kindleberger trap. Okay, it's an economic trap.
Correct.
And Charles Kindleberger, who was one of the economists who worked for the Marshall Plan for redevelopment of Europe, he had written analyzing the depression which had taken place in the 1920s and 30s. Then he had said that economically there was a shift from Europe to America, that is the US, after the First World War. But the US was still in that old doctrine of non-interference in European affairs.
Isolation.
Yeah. Because of this, what happened was that the deliverables for global public goods was not there. You know, खाने पीने का सामान, medicines, there's so much of things that the rest of the globe requires. At that time, the West and everybody was requiring, which nobody was providing. The League of Nations was a failure. They were not able to provide anything. And because of that, he said that you get an economic trap which leads you to recession. The interdependence has increased those chances enormously. If that was the case then, when you were hardly interdependent on others and you had colonies and empires, what about today? And you see the global south. They are dependent, पूरा उनका गेहूं, उनका तेल, सारा कुछ खाने का, पकाने का तेल, सब कुछ वहां से आता था, यूक्रेन और रशिया से. And if these two countries have been orchestrated to go to war against each other, global south तो भूखा घूम रहा है. Second was COVID. Again, the UN has been found to be a failure. Useless. They were not able to provide the vaccines to the global south. In fact, the developed countries hoarded their vaccines, little realizing. Just imagine the politicians, the way they were thinking then. The vaccine itself has a life. It has a life. After that, it is of no use. I think इनिशियल वैक्सीन फाइजर मोडर्ना जो बनाए थे उनके तो 6 महीने के ही लाइफ थे. इमेजिन हाउ मेनी ऑफ दोज वैक्सीन हैव दे वुड हैव डंप्ड इन द ड्रेन्स. दिस दे विल नॉट टेल कि भाई कितना वैक्सीन उनका वेस्ट हो गया है विच वाज नॉट यूज्ड. When India was sending, our own woke brigade was shouting कि क्यों भेज रहे हो, हमारे बंदे को चाहिए. यार, to vaccinate a population, there is a finite time that is needed. There are X number of people only who will be able to vaccinate you, and he can do Y number of people, X into Y. That is the number of people in a day, and multiplied by 6 months, that is the number of people only you can vaccinate. You just can't vaccinate कि भाई vaccinate कर दो सबको vaccinate. You can't do. So if that be the case, then if there is some stock available with you, you can give it to the other people. At least it will be utilized there. It won't go waste. That was what India was doing. And that is the reason why in the UN, the foreign minister of Ghana openly said that India is a multilateral institution as far as the global south
घाना,
is concerned, because
जमैका,
खाना
पता
दिया,
नहीं
पैसा दिया, medicines दिए, सब कुछ दिया उनको.
कितनी कंट्रीज ने बोला सर,
Yeah.
घाना, जमैका, ये वो.
Yeah, but Ghana to openly said that UN is not failed. It is, I look at India not as a country but as a multilateral institution. Now, if this is the situation, then no wonder the countries are facing recession. We are looking only at Europe. Imagine what is happening to the global south. They are dependent on aid. So much of aid used to come from the European countries. Now there are no money. Look at, just to propagate कि भाई USA should be the leading power in the world and continue to be the leading power. What is the kind of situation you have orchestrated? You can keep telling कि भाई, yes, Russia has invaded. Russia may keep calling it special ops. It's not a special ops. It's a proper invasion that they have done. So that is one
लीगैलिटी
part.
है सर,
Huh?
लीगैलिटी
Pardon?
के लिए करा है उसने अपने.
Yeah, यानी जो बोलो, it's a war. War is a war is a war. But who orchestrated it? You could have sat across the table and spoken. अब होने भी वाला था. टर्की ने बुलवाया था, and the foreign ministers of both Ukraine and Russia had gone there, and people were quite sanguine कि कुछ हो जाएगा.
वो तो
But
सर बोरिस जॉनसन ने आके खत्म कर दिया था पूरा.
बोरिस जॉनसन कहाँ, वो तो जेलेंस्की ने स्टेटमेंट दे दिया
नहीं,
कि
वो
नहीं.
आया था ना, बोरिस जॉनसन आया सर, उसके बाद जेलेंस्की ने बोला मैं बैक डाउन.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल वही. बोरिस जॉनसन तो कैट्सपॉ है यार.
मैसेंजर था सर वो.
He was a messenger, and that's it.
वो
That's what has
व्हाट्सएप था,
happened.
सेंडर कौन था पता नहीं.
हाँ, यार ओपनली कह सकता हूं मैं, यानी यूके फॉर लॉन्ग हैज एक्टेड एज वन ऑफ द कॉलोनीज ऑफ यूएसए.
51st स्टेट सर.
या तो वो तो इट इज द 51st स्टेट. सो इट इज नोन थिंग कि बोरिस जॉनसन गया, मतलब वो किसके कहने पे गया होगा? उन्हीं के कहने पे गया होगा. ओपनली नहीं करना चाहते कि दिखाने के लिए कि रशिया इज अ बैड गाय. बट दिस इज अ सिचुएशन नाउ, कैच 22.
सर बट एक चीज सबसे ज्यादा जो बेवकूफी वाली लगती है कि हम लोग हम लोग चीजें पढ़ रहे हैं, चीजें देख रहे हैं, बेसिक अक्ल यूज कर रहे हैं. आप लोगों को थोड़ा मिलिट्री में ज्यादा एक्सपीरियंस है, जो इकोनॉमिक्स हैं वो दे आर सेइंग दिस कि बॉस ये दिस इज अ पाथ टू सुसाइड. आप कर क्या रहे हो? व्हाई हैव यू स्टॉप द ऑयल? व्हाई हैव यू डन दिस? अभी जो द थिंग दैट इज प्रिकिंग मी सर, कि ये जो थोड़ा सा एंटी वॉर चीज शुरू हुई थी, ये तो नॉर्थ स्ट्रीम उड़ा दिया. अभी जिसने मर्जी उड़ाया, वो सेपरेट डिस्कशन है. नॉर्थ स्ट्रीम यू टेकन आउट, तो वो जो कुछ अगर रिलेशनशिप स्टार्ट हो सकता था, आपने वो भी खत्म कर दिया.
नहीं, अभी भी पुतिन ने बोला इफ यू वांट बाय
एक
दिसंबर आई
पाइप है.
कैन गिव यू. नॉट नॉर्थ स्ट्रीम 1 को हिट किया था, नॉर्थ स्ट्रीम 2 कैन बी डन.
टू
एंड
में एक
फिंगर्स
पाइपलाइन है.
सस्पिशन इज गोइंग ऑन स्वीडन because Sweden has refused to join the investigation.
They've not even giving the this thing.
Nothing. They refused to join the investigation completely. No data is being shared. So the suspicion goes there. May not be. They may not have done. They may have their own reasons. But when you avoid your investigation, and investigation is being done by Norway and other countries. It's Russians have not been called into that. Investigations are being done by them. उसी के साथ आप मना कर रहे हो. NATO ज्वाइन करना चाह रहे हो आप, Sweden and Finland, and Sweden you're not ready to join. So though on the net the chatter is the suspicion is on Sweden, but openly तो आएगा नहीं. But Nord Stream 2 is still there.
एक
That has
पाइपलाइन
not been
पूरा है
hit.
सर.
No, Nord Stream. See, Nord Stream 1, let me clarify. When we say Nord Stream 1, it's not just a single pipeline.
There too, sir.
No, 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 no. There is a Nord Stream 1, there is a Nord Stream 2. When you say a Nord Stream 1, it is not one or two pipelines. There are multiple pipelines. Out
Two
of that,
million
a
six.
few of them were hit. Doesn't mean that the entire pipeline was hit. The deliverable became less. In any case, वो भेज ही नहीं रहा था. He was sending hardly anything.
कुछ बंद ही था सर.
Yeah. So Nord Stream 2, he has said while the repair work can be completed in one, Nord Stream 2, he is ready to give them by December if they start talks with him and give money in rubles. Okay. Now, wo I am waiting for the winter when the people will start screaming. धीरे धीरे it is starting.
चीख तो निकल रही है सर.
हाँ. Okay. While they may just because see the tensions are very high, so any small incident can blow up. Any incident can blow up into anything now today, like what happened in Paris the other day. It was just that two girls were not permitted to go into the school wearing a hijab, and look at the riots that took place in Paris. Okay. It is because the tension is very high, the anger is very high, you're not
Options बहुत
able
हैं.
to express. So any small incident happening anywhere can blow up. It didn't blow up in such a big way even when they had brought out the anti hijab rules. थोड़ा बहुत हुआ था, इतना नहीं हुआ, where they themselves were, people were throwing fire bombs and tear gas had to be thrown at them and in downtown Paris. Okay, so anything can happen. It can blow up into anything. Like a couple of weeks ago, BBC itself was giving the news. Not BBC. This was CNN and Al Jazeera, where they were interviewing people in Britain, and especially the Midlands. Midlands are not very well off. The Midland area is not very well off, and so they had targeted the Midland to find, and Midlands and to the north, and even in Scotland because it gets quite cold. They were all investing in woolens, going to the flea market. You can't buy new, so you go to a flea market. Flea market is वो भंगार के पास जाके आप
हाँ, used कपड़े या चोरी के कपड़े.
यूज्ड कपड़े, बिल्कुल बिल्कुल यूज्ड कपड़े वगैरह आप खरीद रहे हो, सेकंड हैंड कपड़े खरीद रहे हो. क्योंकि he said the ladies were saying हमने we have to decide. I can either afford food or heating. I can't afford both. So the heating is going to be cut. Hence, I need woolens because खाना टेबल पे मैंने पहुंचाना है. Yesterday only I was watching this on I think Facebook में आ रहा था या LinkedIn में आ रहा था. People going around Los Angeles, Chicago,
हाँ हाँ हाँ.
and showing all the homeless people who are now staying,
YouTube
who
पे
have
है
come
सर.
into the
YouTube पे है.
streets.
YouTube पे वीडियोस हैं.
And they're just living there. They're nothing. Small tents, cardboard के उसके अंदर रह रहे हैं. They're living on the streets now.
बुरे हाल हैं सर.
बहुत बुरा हाल है. What will you do? So it is this winter. After this winter, maybe something, or through the winter, something will happen.
बट
Because
इनको पहले अकल क्यों नहीं आई सर? इतना सब कुछ कचरा हो रहा है, तुमको दिख रहा है तुम्हारे पैसे जा रहे हैं, यू नो दैट बिना गैस के आप रह नहीं सकते। आपकी जर्मनी की तो पूरी इंडस्ट्री बंद हो रही है। आउडी
सबकी
तो
बंद हो गई, सबकी बंद हो
आउडी
गई। दैट्स व्हाई आई लाफ जब आईएमएफ बोलता है कि $100 ट्रिलियन जीडी लोगों के जीडीपी टोटल जाएगा। घंटा जाएगा यार। यू आर ऑल गोइंग इनटू डिप्रेशन, रिसेशन में जा रहे हो तुम लोग, और तुम कह रहे हो कि एंड यू आर worried. IMF and World Bank is worried. In one report they say that you may go have a repeat of the depression that you had.
बट सर इनको
Except
पहले क्यों नहीं समझ में आया कि ये व्हाई इज इट नॉट एनीबॉडीज रेजिंग देयर वॉइस एंड सेइंग अमेरिकन यार साइड में बैठो भाई, हम हमको अपने पॉपुलेशन को देखने दो, कर क्या रहे हो, स्टॉप दिस।
यार
एक्सेप्ट फॉर हंगरी who's probably come out and said enough, I'm not, मैं नहीं करता ये।
बिल्कुल,
तुमको जो करना है कर लो, मेरे को ईयू से निकालना है ईयू से निकाल दो, नेटो से जो करना है करो, मेरे को आई विल नॉट डू दिस। वो विक्टर ओबान ने बड़ा क्लियरली बोल दिया,
वो तो क्लियरली
मैं
बोल
नहीं
दिया।
करने वाला यार, तुमको जो करना है करो। इटली द न्यू प्राइम मिनिस्टर ने थोड़ी ठीक ठाक आवाजें निकाली थी, बट उसके बाद अगेन शी सेड यार मेरे को अपना यूक्रेन
यार
है यार।
इटली क्या कर सकता है? Italy is in stagflation, and look at their economy for the last 3-4 years. They are in stagnation,
Yeah.
right? So they are economically quite badly off.
और उसके बाद पैसे दिए जा रहे हो आप यूक्रेन को सर?
यूएस बोल रहा है तो दे रहे हो
सर ये
The-
तो वही बात होगी ना, गड्ढे में कूद जाता है वो। आई मीन
बिल्कुल। जब आपके पास फौज ही नहीं है, कुछ भी नहीं है दादागिरी करने के लिए, क्या करोगे आप? आपका मार्केट कहां है? Do you have a market for anything that you make? That's why you went to the Chinese and signed the agreement, and you paid the penalty. You had the largest COVID breakout was in Italy,
इटली
because and exactly that place, I think North Italy में जहां पे maximum Chinese and all were there, वहां से आपका शुरू हुआ है पूरा, and your
यूरोप में
whole
पूरा
health,
स्प्रेड वहीं से शुरू हुआ, करेक्ट सर?
yeah, it went from Italy, and that's when they realized. And the second issue is that we have been through that problem when you had coalition governments,
है।
right? Italy is all coalition government.
Hmm,
Look at Israel, also coalition government. But one saving grace for Israel is it's a nation at war for
उनकी
survival.
नेशनल पॉलिसी सीधी रहती है सर। हाँ,
तो वो सीधी रहती है कि भाई वी आर सराउंडेड बाय एनिमीज, वी आर एट वॉर, सो वहां पे कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं होता। बट लुक एट इटली, आई थिंक चौथा या पांचवा प्राइम मिनिस्टर आया अभी, धड़ाधड़ गिरते जा रहे हैं वो। यू कांट सर्वाइव। हाउ डू यू सर्वाइव?
यूके
यूके इज ओवर। उसका तो मीम भी निकल के आ रहे हैं विद हर फोटो एंड कैबेज का फोटो की विच विल लास्ट लॉन्गर। टुडे शी हैड अ ग्रिलिंग एंड शी केप्ट टेलिंग कि नहीं नहीं आई एम अ फाइटर। फाइटर क्या?
ये
ऑल योर पॉलिसीज।
आज उसको निकाल दिया ना सर, वो जिसने बोला था यार यो सूर्या बेवरमैन को निकाल दिया ना, अभी आया 22 मिनट पहले। शी इज
अरे
बीन
उसको
सैक्ड।
निकालने से भी क्या होगा? यू हैव टू गो। Suella Beverman has gone primarily because for their survival, they needed FDI from India. That was the background to Johnson starting that FTA talks with India. As it is, there's quite a lot of FDI of India in UK. And there was almost about $100 billion which were likely to be invested there. The moment she made the statement, and you were keen कि दिवाली के पहले ये हो जाना चाहिए कि दिवाली बोनंजा हो जाएगा. Moment she made the statement, India said Tata bye bye, thank you, good day. She went to the US, and the US clearly told her, I don't have that kind of money to invest in you. That's it. It was known कि Suella Beverman had to go. उसने जाना था.
प्लस हो गई
But
होगी यूएस के पास, इंडिया को थोड़ा इन्फ्लुएंस करो।
कैसे? अभी
इसी
इंडिया
से
तो उसको हाथ, एंड शी वाज द वन जो बहुत एंटी थी इस एफटीए विद इंडिया, राइट? तो जब तक ये है कोई एफटीए नहीं होने वाला है, ये जाएगी। और ऋषि सुनक आएगा एस प्राइम मिनिस्टर।
वो तो
ऋषि सुनक आएगा अभी भी, बिकॉज कंजर्वेटिव्स, एंड लेट अस बी वेरी क्लियर, द दैट कंट्री इज अ वेरी रेसिस्ट कंट्री,
वेरी
okay, very racist country. Even now, because अगर डिबेट सुनते, ऋषि सुनक ने एग्जैक्टली बोला था क्या होगा तुम्हारे इकोनॉमी का अगर तुम ये करोगे, एंड ये चारों डिबेट में ये यही बोल रही थी मैंने ये करना है, और वही हुआ जो उसने बोला है. And even now the BBC writers, when they say कि yes, Rishi Sunak as the prime minister, next three options में he is a chancellor only of the exchequer, and there are white either man or woman as the prime minister. So it runs very deep. He lost out only because of his color and
Yeah,
his
yeah,
race, nothing
yeah,
else.
yeah.
Nothing else. So that
Sir,
is
thoda sa
the
let's
issue.
talk about NATO. My last question would be that, and then before I get into that, guys, please do hit the like button, subscribe. Please switch on your bell icon so that you get these videos. I'll try and do more and more. Some of you have actually told me to do more in the nights. I'll try and do that as much as I can. Uh, and yes, finally, if you can do support Dev Talks, you can do it with the options and the methods which are below. Thank you so much. And please start shooting your questions. I've got quite a lot of questions and comments. I will go through them at the end. Sir, my final question to you before I hit this up. ये जो NATO है सर, NATO में one thing that we are realizing, and this रूसी had done a study, मैंने I did this video yesterday, रूसी study को मैंने थोड़ा सा quote किया था. It's a very interesting study कि भाई आपके पास ammunition बनाने का capacity नहीं है. आप जितना ammunition एक साल में बनाते हो, ये war में 2 हफ्ते में 3 हफ्ते में जा रहा है वो. NATO के पास इस टाइम पे अभी जो न्यूक्लियर एक्सरसाइज चल रही है, ऐसा बोलते हैं NATO न्यूक्लियर एक्सरसाइज. NATO does not own any nuclear weapons. I mean,
It's the US.
It's the US, UK and France if he decides to give it, because France तो अपना ही गेम खेलता है, वो सेपरेट रहता है. सर, ऊपर से विक्टर ओबान साहब साइड में बैठे हैं. टर्की एंड ग्रीस बोलता है भाई लड़ेंगे हम. फ्रांस बोलता है जी टर्की एंड ग्रीस लड़ोगे तो मैं ग्रीस के साइड करूंगा. ठीक है जी, यहां पर ये चल रहा है. पोलैंड का आई डोंट नो व्हाट इज अप विद दैट कंट्री. वो तो चढ़े रहते हैं हर, आई मीन दे वांट टू अटैक रशिया. आई थिंक उनका एक ही, देयर इज ओनली वन कंट्री इन द यूरोप वेयर इतना अग्रेसिव पोस्चर है रशिया की तरफ से, दैट दे आर एट इट. एंड
That is because of the past history.
पास्ट हिस्ट्री.
And also, remember, for a long period of time, Western Ukraine was part of the Polish Empire.
Yeah, Lvov region and all that stuff, so he's got some interest there.
Yeah, no, right up to Kiev.
Yeah,
Kiev and westwards, those used to be part of the Polish Lithuanian Empire.
हाँ जी. Now
So
finally
historically, people should know.
finally in this जो खिचड़ी बन रही है सर, पोलैंड साहब कहते हैं भाई जर्मनी को मेरे को 1.3 ट्रिलियन डॉलर्स दे दो, आपने जो सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर में हमारे साथ किया. जर्मनी कहता है अच्छा ऐसी बात है, मेरे को सारे लैंड वापस कर दो मेरे. तो सर ये नेटो क्या बचा है यहाँ पर? तो आपस में ही there are so many differences. There are people ready to go to war like Turkey and Greece तो लड़ते रहते हैं वो, and that's a short straw somewhere.
Actually, NATO outlived. See, why was NATO formed? NATO was formed to counter USSR. USSR had not formed the Warsaw Pact till then.
जी.
The Warsaw Pact was formed as a
After
counter to NATO.
जी.
NATO seeds were sown when the logistics into Berlin was denied by Stalin.
Blockade of Berlin.
Yeah. And when the air bridge was formed, and then he realized that he could not, that is where the seeds of NATO lie.
49 if I'm not wrong, sir.
Yeah, that's where the seeds of NATO lie, and that the NATO people decided that yes,
हम करेंगे कुछ.
it is going to be something. NATO उसके पहले ही form हो गया था, but it had still not gained traction till that happened, the blockade of Berlin. I think 48 was the blockade of Berlin. Okay. Warsaw Pact was formed thereafter. So the single purpose of NATO was to counter the Soviet expansion into Western Europe. Once The Warsaw Pact collapsed and the Soviet Union collapsed. NATO lost its essence of being. What is NATO now? For what?
Time pass.
No. NATO is the, see, uh, it's not time. It is, see, the American strategy at certain levels, you got to give them credit.
Extension है sir. There's no question.
Yeah, yeah. Just understand this.
जी.
The world island, as per what uh, Mackinder had given, there is, it makes sense in that. Essentially, the main world island consists of Eurasia and Africa. They're interlinked. They're joined
Hmm.
together. It's one
Hmm.
single big landmass.
Piece of land. हाँ.
It's one big piece of landmass, which is what is the world island, where Russian areas, Soviet Union area, which was the area which he had mentioned in 1904, that you dominate this and you can dominate the world because of resources. Now comes US. US is an outlying island. It's not connected to the world island. So Mahan's theory of sea power, that to be able to dominate the world island, you have to first dominate the sea. And then you need physical presence on the world island. At that point in time, the developed area was what? Europe.
जी.
NATO controlled by US. तो यूएस ने नेटो को छोड़ नहीं सकता था, बिकॉज अगर उसको तोड़ देता तो उसका प्रेजेंस कहां रहता फिर. और by intervening in the name of spread of democracy in various places, today he has close to 800 bases, lily pads, including lily pads all over the world island and the immediate outlying islands.
Correct sir.
Okay. Now he started finding in the second decade of the 21st century that the world is shifting towards a multipolarity. The moment you shift towards multipolarity, the nations which had given you permission to keep the lily pad, वो तोड़ देंगे, बोलेंगे क्यों? I can make use of the other power who is here. Why should I need you?
Local power. Hmm.
Yeah, the other power who is there in the region, I will take his help. Why do I need
Yeah.
you?
Hmm.
Then slowly and steadily comes that his power, physical presence decays, reduces. The problem US is finding today, because I feel their State Department and Department of Defense are still in the 20th century. Other nations had, it's not that the US has decayed completely. Why do people say कि it's a declining power? ढलता सूरज है, क्योंकि दूसरे जगह सूरज उगने लगा है ना. दैट मीन्स द गैप विच वॉज देयर, कॉम्प्रहेंसिव नेशनल पावर का जो गैप था वो कम हो गया है. पहले बहुत ज्यादा था. सी एट वन पॉइंट इन टाइम इन 50s, यूएस controlled almost close to 22% of the global trade. Today it's not the case. The decline has been steadily down as other nations have developed and other powers have started rising. Now the gap has come and they don't understand the meaning of partnership.
Hmm.
Partnership means compromise hota hai. You will have nation has its own, each nation has its own interest. You have your interest. In the regional level, your interests at some of places will overlap, other places it may not. The same nation at has its regional aspirations, has global interests also. So when you make the Venn diagram of these three circles, there will be some overlap, which is okay. What do you do with other places? That you want very close relations with India, and वहां जाके आप बोल रहे हो उसको जो भी कहानी बनाओ, 450 मिलियन आप उसको बोल रहे हो सस्टेनेंस एड में दे रहे हो F-16 के लिए, क्यों दे रहे हो उसको? उसको हुक्म दे दो कि भाई F-16 आप चलाओगे नहीं, ग्राउंडेड है, हम सस्टेनेंस नहीं दे रहे आपको। आपको डर है ना उड़ाएगा तो गिरेगा, आप उसको बोल दो हम नहीं दे रहे सस्टेनेंस, जहाज आपकी गिरती है गिर जाएगी, वी आर नॉट गिविंग यू सस्टेनेंस। सस्टेनेंस क्यों दे रहे हो? और फिर हमको बोल रहे हो नहीं हम अपग्रेड नहीं कर रहे, सस्टेनेंस ही दे रहे, क्यों दे रहे हो?
काउंटर टेररिज्म के लिए सर F-16
वो तो लाफेबल है, वो तो जो कह लो। नंबर टू, बहुत डर लगता है जैसे ही वो कहता है कि भाई स्टैंडर्ड इनका टर्म होता है, स्पेशली व्हेन द डेमोक्रेट्स कम इनटू पावर, दैट इट्स अ मोस्ट डेंजरस प्लेस, न्यूक्लियर पार्ट। That means that is the logic they always use, that we must stay in touch with them and help them. गलत। दैट मीन्स जो उसका सुइसाइड है कि भाई पिस्तौल यहां रख के अगर ये हो जाएगा तो मेरा ये हो जाएगा, न्यूक्लियर का जो थ्रेट देता है सुइसाइड का, वो आप स्वॉलो कर रहे हो।
हर बारी वही गोली खाते हैं,
एंड
हर बारी
हर बार इनका जो एम्बेसडर जो भी होता है वहां जाता है, वो कहता है
आजाद
कि
है।
भाई आजाद कश्मीर। तीसरी बात, 1 साल हो गया है, अभी तक तो कांग्रेस आपके पास है, रिपब्लिकन्स के पास गया नहीं है, आपने एम्बेसडर का नाम ही नहीं दिया। 1 साल हो गए, सितंबर 2021 में आपका एम्बेसडर जा चुका है यहां से, 22 अक्टूबर आ गया, आपने एम्बेसडर का तो नाम ही नहीं बताया अभी तक। आप
वो भी
कैसे कह
एम्बेसडर
सकते हो
में।
कि, कैसे कहते हो कि कांग्रेस ने एक्सेप्ट नहीं किया? नाम कहां दिया आपने अभी तक? और कह रहे हो कि आपके एनएसएस में कह रहे हो कि हम तो आपके की डिफेंस पार्टनर है, स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनर है। किस तरह का स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनर है कि आप एम्बेसडर नहीं दे सकते? आप वीजा के लिए अप्लाई करो, आपको 800 दिन से ज्यादा लगता है टूरिस्ट वीजा के लिए।
चाइनीज को 3 दिन लगते हैं सर।
3 दिन में। तो उसको थ्रेट बोल रहे हो, उसको 3 दिन में दे रहे हो। मैं आपका बहुत अच्छा चहेता पार्टनर हूं, मुझे मुझे 855, जैसे अभी अक्टूबर के महीने में मैंने अप्लाई किया है वीजा के लिए जाने के लिए, डॉटर के कॉन्वोकेशन के लिए जो अगले साल मई में है, मुझे डेट मिला है मार्च 2025। बताओ। हम्म? हम सब तरफ सबको खाना खिला रहे हैं, सबको दे रहे हैं। यूएन बोल रहा है जिस तरह से the government has looked after all these people, the food organization says that India has done a wonderful job, people must learn from India how they manage to provide the public goods to its people, and जर्मनी के थ्रू स्पॉन्सर करके आप मुझे फूड इंडेक्स में, हंगर इंडेक्स में पाकिस्तान और श्रीलंका के भी नीचे दे रहे हो यार। उनको खाना मैं खिला रहा हूं, श्रीलंका को, एंड इट इज जर्मन स्पॉन्सर्ड, एंड जर्मनी इज टोइंग देयर लाइन। मतलब क्या बोल रहे हो आप यार? यानी आई थिंक they are still not able to understand that what partnership means, कि साथ किस तरह से लेना है, कॉम्प्रोमाइजेस करने हैं आपको उस रीजन, किसी के साथ किसी को डिक्टेट नहीं कर सकते। डर उनको ये है कि चाइनीज मार्केट तो बंद हो गया, उनको हमारा मार्केट चाहिए। अब मार्केट आपको गुंडागर्दी से तो नहीं मिलेगी, लाइक अ स्कूल यार्ड बुली। तो
यूरोप में
एंड
कर सकते हैं सर वो सब, यहाँ करना बहुत मुश्किल होगा इनको।
यूरोप में तो मार्केट नहीं है ना यार।
जो भी गुंडागर्दी तो कर सकते हैं ना सर उनके साथ,
वो
दे
तो
कैन
अब
थ्रेटन देम।
गुंडागर्दी करके देख लो, जो सुन लिया आपने, अब देख लो क्या यूरोप की हालत हो गई है अब। यहाँ से चेन्नई आने से पहले, 1 महीना पहले, आई हैड अटेंडेड अ राउंड टेबल जिसमें ईयू के मेंबर्स भी आए थे, यूक्रेन लड़ाई के बारे में ही डिस्कस कर रहे थे। उन्होंने बोला था जितने पैसे उन्होंने सेट असाइड करे थे, पूरा बजट बनाया था, प्लान किया था, व्हेन दे हैड लेड आउट देयर इंडो पैसिफिक पॉलिसी। Okay, EU had a stated Indo-Pacific policy, क्या करना है. They had laid out money and everything they had set aside for the next 2 years, how to invest in the growth of the various countries to balance China's BRI. कहते सब खत्म, पैसे ही नहीं है, it's all gone. लड़ाई में सब खर्च हो गए और अब कोई पैसे ही नहीं बचे।
और खास पता नहीं
लड़ाई
कितने
एंड
हैं, वो तो
कोविड,
अलग है।
लड़ाई एंड कोविड, दो
वो अलग है
इश्यूज।
सर, द काइंड ऑफ करप्शन दैट वुड हैव हैपेंड इन दिस एंटायर थिंग, वो तो बात ही अलग है।
एंड किसी को कोई हिसाब नहीं पता है कि ये हथियार के जो पैसे गए थे कितने हथियार के पैसे जो कह रहे हैं कि मैं एड यूक्रेन को दे रहा हूं, यूक्रेन के हाथ में कोई पैसे नहीं गए हैं, उनके डिफेंस इंडस्ट्री में के ही पास पैसे गए हैं। क्या हथियार गया है, इज इट वर्थ दैट मच, कितने पैसे किसके जेब में गए, किसके अकाउंट में गए, कोई हिसाब नहीं है। इवन यूके यूएस ऑल्सो हैज नो क्लू विच वेपन हैज गॉन वेयर, किसके हाथ गया है, पैसे किधर गए हैं, कहां गए हैं, कोई क्लू नहीं। अब आप बता लो, ये स्थिति है आज में। चाइना वैसे ही वाट लगी हुई है उसकी। अब वो आ रहा है, क्या करना चाहता है। ओपनिंग एड्रेस में तो उसने बताया ही नहीं है कि दैट ही वांट्स चाइना टू बी एन इकोनॉमिक जायंट।
सुपर पावर का नाम नहीं है कहीं पे भी।
कहीं नहीं, ही सेज अ वेल डेवलप्ड कंट्री एंड ही
दैट्स
इज
इट।
वांटिंग थ्रस्ट ऑन इनोवेशन। इकोनॉमी के बारे में तो बात ही नहीं किया। द ओनली थिंग ही स्पोकन अबाउट इकोनॉमी इज कॉमन प्रॉस्पेरिटी, कि मतलब
और
तेरे से
कम
पैसे
करूंगा
लेके
मैं,
सबको दूंगा मैं।
और
एंड
कम करूंगा
दिस,
मैं इसको।
correct, and this is the first time after Mao, or I would say after Mao, because Deng Xiaoping was the first person who openly stated that it is not bad to be rich, and in this he has openly stated it is bad to be rich. It's a push back to Mao time, and which is dangerous for the region,
दुनिया पूरी
because then
बदल
he
रही है सर।
becomes a maverick and you never know what he can do.
सो
And
गाइस
but
आई थिंक नेक्स्ट वीक आई विल ट्राई एंड, सॉरी सर आप कुछ बोल रहे थे।
no, no, then he hits out which place you don't know.
नेक्स्ट वीक आई विल ट्राई एंड गेट जनरल साहब टू टॉक अबाउट, यू नो, बाय दैट टाइम शी जिनपिंग थोड़ा सा एस्टैब्लिश टाइप हो जाएगा, उसका पूरा रिजल्ट आ जाएगा। उसकी गद्दी थोड़ी सी, आई थिंक सीट नहीं सी रहे हैं अभी, थोड़े कपड़े शपड़े नए बनवा रहा है वो, फोटो वोटो के लिए, वो सब ठीक है। सो लेट लेट दैट थिंग हैपन एंड देन आफ्टर दैट वील एनालाइज इट नेक्स्ट वीक, because there will be a lot of movements, jokes apart, there will be a lot of movements with regards the जो उनकी मिलिट्री है, there will be a lot of movement, उनका जो पॉलिट ब्यूरो है उसमें काफी मूवमेंट होगा। तो आई विल कीप दिस द चाइना टॉपिक फॉर नेक्स्ट वीक एंड वील काइंड ऑफ डिस्कस दिस आउट।
Yeah.
But sir, now let's get into these questions. I've got a lot of them.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's kind of just run through them, just short, long comments as you wish. The first one is come from Mandar, who says a full-blown war, depression आएगा with rationing, malnutrition, and epidemics. Comment on that, sir.
Yeah, yeah. It is going to be a major issue which Europe is going to face for the after a very long time. See, the background to I would say after the Napoleonic Wars, when they went in with Metternich and all these people, they went in for a balance of power. Uh, it uh, well, wars did take place, but not to such an extent that the population got affected, famines
हाँ,
took place,
hmm,
everything took place all over the years when they would go to war,
yeah,
because they would all survive. They had no logistics. So Europe has to thank, and the world has to thank Napoleon for creating logistic nodes for conducting battles in that
battles.
region,
Hmm.
and not depend and paying those local people and getting things and getting his own bakery and making his own kitchen and sending food. Otherwise, earlier they used to be dependent on a particular place which could sustain a force, X number of force only for a certain number of period. After that, वहां तो खत्म हो गया, and they would go for war elsewhere to another region which could support them, and they wouldn't bother about the famine that they had created behind for the local people.
जी,
Now, this is going to create, because Europe is running out of vegetable oils which they use for their cooking. They don't have olive oil, they don't have wheat, so they won't have any bread, and uh, they'll just have their meat. That's about all. And costs are going high. Like I said, it is touching double digit. Winter is going to be very bad. How they're going to stock themselves, what they're going to feed, especially at the lower middle income. middle income and lower middle income and the poor people, they are going to be worst affected, I fear, for them in this winter season, especially in Europe and in the global south. A lot of the least developed countries,
Africa.
they're going to be affected very badly.
Africa, I
India is
think
doing,
Pakistan is going to have a tough time.
Pakistan is finished. Yeah, I really don't know. 450 million you're giving them. Still one third of the country is still under water. वो floods के पानी कहीं जाने के लिए जगह ही नहीं है, because सब तरफ उन्होंने तो मकाने बना दिए हैं. The same
Pakistan
thing
to
what
wait,
we have
yeah.
done in our lot of our big cities. That is what
True.
has happened there. And there is no food that is going there. India can give. India से लेगा नहीं वो कि बेइज्जती हो रही है. कहाँ से लेगा?
यहाँ से
And
दिलाया जाएगा.
Saudi Arabia को Biden has antagonized.
Yeah.
MBS. So he's refused to quote his line and he has said, sorry, we are not going to do that. Now they are very keen to put a cap, put a price cap, that the global oil price cap should be X amount. Nobody is going to listen to them.
EU ने मना कर दिया सर.
Look, nobody will listen to them. Why will you? See, he is wanting to keep a cap so that his economy is not impacted, so that he can send oil and gas dependencies to Europe and to India and other places. वो होना नहीं है. It will not happen. The cap, nobody is listening to him today. So they are talking a lot with India also कि cap कर दो. So I entirely agree. Yes, this winter is going to be very bad for the global south and to Europe. And if they don't change their ways, Europe will join the global south.
A lot of people say
Industries will
that.
collapse.
Yeah, a lot of people say it's already there. And as the comment says here, German industries already started looking at greener
Yes.
pastures
Yes,
elsewhere.
they're all coming to India and other places. They're looking at other places where they can survive. How will he manage? And the moment everything goes there, there are no jobs there.
वो पूरा उनका lifestyle, that entire socialistic
Finished.
lifestyle is gone.
Finished. Now look at Sweden. Sweden is one of the few countries which gives you, what is that? The
Cradle to the
universal
grave.
basic income,
Hmm.
UBI. Okay,
Yeah.
if you don't have a job, they give you a basic income. How will you give it?
पैसे नहीं होने सर.
Because पैसे ही नहीं है लोग. See, no, it's a heavily taxed country. Minimum
50%,
tax is
yes.
30%. Minimum tax is 30% and goes up. But they deliver. People don't cry there in Sweden because they deliver. They give you free schooling, college,
Education,
medical,
medical.
everything is free. And if you don't have a job, they give you that universal basic income. Everything is given. Everything is finished. There's no gas to run your industries. What do you do? Nobody is buying Swedish weapons to be sent to Ukraine. It is the Americans who are telling that you buy these and I will give you these weapons. कोई Swedish weapons तो खरीद ही नहीं रहा.
Yeah,
खरीदेगा भी तो no. खरीदेगा भी तो where is the scope for him to give it at that level? He doesn't have. And it's all American weapons which are going there. American industry is making all the money and the middlemen are making all the money. What will happen?
High-powered German delegation is visiting China next month and having allowed China to hugely associate with industry, so much so that lobbyists are now against curbs on business with China. Alternative ढूंढ रहे हैं तो सर.
No, चाइना के साथ जाएंगे तो उनका इंडस्ट्री कोलैप्स हो जाएगा. Because the Americans will come very heavily on them. But they have no choice. He will look at China also. But the moment he looks at China, then he's going against the US national security strategy, the US interests. Can he afford to do that? He's most welcome. Because they haven't decoupled that much. They had started decoupling initially about 2 years ago, and then they've stopped. About only 50-60 MSMEs had moved out from there. That's about all. Rest everything, the dependencies are still there. Philips is still, if you look at Netherlands, Philips is still there in China. So a whole lot of Siemens is still there in China.
Time लगेगा sir. I mean, if something needs to move, it will take a long time.
Where there is a will, there is a way. When you
Yeah,
have the lure of the lucre,
yeah. That
avarice for greenbacks, then you will stay in China. But
point
now
taken.
it's going to get difficult after this 20th Congress, the way he has, especially when you read his opening remarks, which he did, it is going back to the Mao era, totally centrally controlled economy. There's going to be no private economy. Then you'll have big problems if you think you will be able to abide by there. He's destroyed Jack Ma and gang, yeah.
Oof.
Complete is gone. So
10
what do you
cents,
think?
सब कुछ खत्म sir.
Sab khatam, big business, everything is
I,
gone.
I,
So
anyways, we'll discuss it in China, but बड़े interesting stories निकल रही हैं वहां से, and there's no question, sir. Don't Russia have their own drones? Why is Russia using Iran-made drones to attack Ukraine?
quantity,
Cost?
cost to is separate thing. Quantity. Look at the 800 tanks which he had taken out and kept in his garage कि भाई अब ये यूज नहीं होगा, उसको रिफर्बिश करके दे रहा है. See, this is the future of warfare. Uh, these are the indicators which tell you of how bitter the fighting is going on. And there's a lot of equipment casualty. When if I say that 1 lakh of them have died and
That's
close
the
to
main
4
trend,
lakh
sir.
people have got injured, you can imagine how bitter the fighting was taking place. So Russians would also have suffered equally the casualties on their war equipment, war waging equipment, and their
Ammunition.
men and material. Now, war waging resources, his capacity, money, how much can he make, how much can his industry make and deliver, and uh, the problems of technology which is coming in, the chips, sanctions on chips and other things on China also, how much can China supply? And these drones, Iran is giving them. I'm sure he would be giving them at a much cheaper rate, like you said.
Great.
So
Hmm.
he will use them, and he's being using them effectively. Whereas the
Very.
Turkish Bakhtiyars, the Bakhtiar has been a failure. All of them have been knocked out of the sky, and nobody talks about those Turkish.
The
And Pakistan
assistant
must be
defense
quite scared.
assistant defense minister of Ukraine, sir. They got pranked by these Russian boys. You know these two Russian boys, right? They
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
pranking people.
But
कल उसने कुछ
he gave them the, it's all blown out of the sky. They were attacked by the normal Russian AD which was there
हाँ,
and they were destroyed.
बट इंटरेस्टिंग ऐसे ये छोटे वाले जो इनके जरान और शहीद जो मर्जी आप कह लो नाम,
Detecting it becomes difficult. Nah?
it's a potent
The
weapon.
bigger it is, you have to go higher. These days, you got to use stealth technology even in your UCAVs and UAVs, that is unarmed systems. You need a
Hmm.
certain degree of stealth.
Hmm. Hmm.
If you're getting detected at a lot, and Russian air defense system is quite good, huh? Whatever people may say about it, like especially abhi S400 you take or S300 and then the improvement S400 and now they're going in for S500.
500.
It is one system which deals with multiple vectors in the sky. See,
Yeah.
sky, when I say vectors, means it looks at a particular angle, another angle, another angle. Different flying bodies fly at different angles in the sky. Aircraft being the highest, and your helicopters and drones coming down. It is one system which is looking at all.
सब कुछ.
It is a grid which looks at all and has the capacity to take out any of them. Unlike at longer range, medium range, short range. And when this is grouped with Pantsir, which is both a weapon and a missile combined on one platform, which is the Vishorad, very short range, which is the quick reaction missiles, then that grid integrated gives you a very good air defense cover. So that has been indicated in this through that prank that the Russian air defense cover has worked very well.
Hmm.
which doesn't speak well about the air defense cover that the Ukrainians are having. That's why they are screaming more and more for their air defense cover.
वो तो सर फर्स्ट मिसाइल अटैक्स में बोलते हैं जो भी था उनका 80% तो उड़ा दिया था इन लोगों ने.
Huh, but I'm surprised neither the Americans nor the West has given them that kind of air defense cover.
क्योंकि पता होगा ना, कल एक क्लेम आया था सर S-300 का, आई बिलीव 200 किलोमीटर की रेंज में एक सुखोई 27 को उड़ाया है S-300 ने. 300
Yeah,
ने.
yeah. S-400 has 400 almost 400 kilometers
But
range.
this is a live war kill, so it's being kind of celebrated in Russia by काफी लोग बहुत खुश
Not
हैं इस
only
पर.
that, you see, the detection range of the radars is quite large.
हाँ जी 400-500.
Yeah, it's quite large. And for your, it knocks out cruise missile also.
जी जी.
So it is, see, the advantage is ये एक system है. Americans का है multiple systems. आपके पास पेट्रियट्स अलग हैं, थैड अलग है, विशोरैड जो है वो अलग है, क्विक रिएक्शन मिसाइल अलग है. So you have multiplicity of platforms.
जी.
Anyway, so that is the reason why they've gone for the Iranian drones.
Sir, this is one question,
Yeah.
and there are two questions of the same sort, so I'll read. मैं दोनों को पढ़ देता हूँ.
Yeah,
Is there a
yeah.
possible end to this war? If yes, would seek your perspective towards logical outcome. And Mr. Balaji says, General Sir, my salutations. My question is, when will this war end, according to you?
The day the Americans decide the war needs to, or the Europeans decide the war needs to end.
It can end tomorrow morning, actually.
It can end tomorrow morning also. The EU has to take a call. What is in their larger geostrategic and geo-economic interest? What is in the interest of the people? And as I see it anyway, the manner in which the referendum was done, to my mind, those 4 provinces, that is illegal. That apart, I look upon it as most likely it is going to be something like a mix of our LOC and LAC with Pakistan and China. Maybe the borders along Russia and Belarus, rest of the border may be something like an LAC, and these 4 provinces is more likely to be like an LOC. Russia today has reached, I feel, in my reading, they have reached an exhaustion point. इससे ज्यादा वो कब्जा नहीं कर सकते. I don't think they have the manpower. We must realize that for a large number of years, decades, Russia's birth rate has been less than the death rate. It's a declining population. So whatever he
Even
may scream, he
even
doesn't
with
have.
mobilization, sir?
It's the reserves he is calling.
तो
Mobilization is reserves, and that is why he is now called the reserves. But the whole lot of people have started running away. I hope people know, have started running away into neighboring countries like Georgia and other places. They've started running away so that he doesn't call them.
Yeah,
Okay.
250,000 people have run away, sir.
Yeah, and for a Russian population, 250,000 is huge. Is huge. Okay. So he is called the reserves. Yeah, because manpower is an issue as far as Russia is concerned. Manpower is an issue as far as Ukraine is also concerned. They've lost a whole lot, and their foreign fighters and others who are coming in. Yeah, so Europe has to take a call, because if this continues as a festering wound, Europe will have, people of Europe will face a lot of issues. And especially if the reports about uh, Turkey sending in ISIS fighters, then look at the large number of Muslim population who are there in Europe, who can get radicalized very easily. And then what happens?
Another Syria, sir.
Yeah, what happens in
That is
Europe?
my main thought processor. मेरे हिसाब से तो बड़ा simple है. I predict the Americans are going to be fighting in Ukraine, not the Russians. They're going to be fighting these particular elements that are going to get created in the next 5-10 years in some other fashion, not direct Americans, but कुछ ना कुछ चलेगा वहां पर. I mean, this is a
करते
history
रहो,
that
but
Americans have.
as far as, see, that is why I said the war ends the day the Europeans decide, EU decide enough is enough.
बहुत हो गया.
and give a slap to Zelensky and call Putin also, give him a slap and say, let's sit and let's discuss. And
Bill.
maybe I feel this is what it is. It is not what the Americans say that when Putin decides to stop. No, Putin is not going to stop.
वो
And the
चलता रहेगा फिर
Americans
वहाँ.
are not going to stop because they are fighting the Russians till the last standing Ukrainian. Okay, so who's suffering? EU. So EU has to take a call. The Europeans
Yeah.
have to take a call finally. When will they say that okay, enough? And that is why I said this winter is going to be interesting.
Unless Merkel comes back into the game, and then things might
No, no,
change.
Merkel
Mother
is,
Merkel has the potential. A lot of people say this. I don't know. I don't. I'm not
yeah,
really
Merkel.
dwelling into it.
That was the reason why she had to go, na, because she wanted the EU to be independent of NATO and not to American line.
The globalist
Be-
agenda got to her.
Yeah, both Macron and oh, they can keep ostracizing. It doesn't make a
What
difference.
is
They don't have the capacity. EU to forget it. It's now a toothless tiger. USA doesn't have the capacity to take Putin out, and they can do nothing. They can keep ostracizing him. वो तो पहले से ही it is now become overt. Earlier it was covert. That's why they never permitted Russia to join Europe.
yeah?
Otherwise, when it broke and Yeltsin was called and they were talking more of him joining the Russia, they never permitted him to join Europe.
Even Putin asked to join NATO.
Yeah, but they can't, na? Because moment that happens, Europe becomes strong. The moment Europe becomes strong, the American influence there finishes. यूरोप ताकतवर नहीं हो सकता ना.
तो सर कौन किसका दोस्त है सर? ये तो बता दो.
लॉर्ड पामस्टन ने कहा था, देयर आर नो परमानेंट फ्रेंड्स, देयर आर नो परमानेंट एनिमीज, इट इज
Bottom
नेशनल
line, guys.
इंटरेस्ट.
Bottom
It
line.
is the
Bottom line.
national interest, and it is in US national interest to dominate the world island. And he will dominate the world island by using various schemes like clash of civilizations, the famous word coined. Islamic militancy was then there. Now Islamic militancy ka ghanta kuch nahi kiya, because it takes the genius of a US to spend trillions and trillions of dollars, fight for 20 years and replace Taliban with Taliban. Need I say anything more? So
Okay, this is
now,
Taliban. This is new and improved 2.0 Taliban, sir.
yeah, whatever, Taliban with Taliban. ठीक है. 20
It's
साल आप लड़े
it's
हो,
a form
कितने
of.
ट्रिलियंस ऑफ डॉलर्स, कितने लोग मर गए, you replace Taliban with
Sir,
Taliban.
a country. I mean, I have an open challenge with someone. Tell me one country that the USA वाले घुसे हैं अंदर and कुछ अच्छा करके बाहर निकले हैं. एक कंट्री नहीं है.
See, when we talk of strategy and grand strategy in military, same applies at the geostrategic level.
True.
Ends, ways, and means.
Means.
So you have to be very, before you go into and do something, you have to be very clear what is the end state you are looking at. That is number one. Number two, after that comes, to achieve that, what are the ways that you can do
Means.
it.
कैसे करेंगे
Then
आप?
you match the ways with your means, and कि भाई इस तरह से करेंगे, right? There's a very interesting article, people should read it who are listening in. Ralph Peters, Redrawing the Borders of Middle East. Though
Ah,
it was published in the American Forces Journal in 2006, it was part of a project of Pax Americana, which was set up in 1992 by the Republican Party. And it was first report was ready, if I remember correctly, around 98, 99. I had gone to Tajikistan as a DA in 2003. The American DA there was, I am an Armored Corps officer, he was also an Armored Corps officer, and we became very good friends. He gave me that report in 2004. It's very interesting to see the countries they have gone in, what kind of situations they have created. If you read that, you'll be very clear what are the ends that the Americans are looking at in the Middle East. I'm trying to research what is the end they are looking at for Europe.
I think back to the second. We got you out from destruction in the Second World War. We are leaving you back right there.
ना तो
That's,
वो किसिंजर ने खुद बोला हुआ है ना, it's
he said
bad to be an enemy of the Americans, but it is worse to be America's friend.
absolutely, absolutely. Sir.
तो यही हो रहा है अभी उनका.
Rupesh Saab says, what will be the impact of US midterm elections in the situation if Biden loses or prevails?
My reading is it's touch and go. Biden will find it very tough in his midterm, because unless he's able to improve the lot of the common man, the voting pattern, if you see, bulk of the common and working class people were with the Republicans. Okay. And that is the people who were with Trump. And that is what is going to happen. Please remember, in these elections, the electoral votes had gone to Biden.
Biden.
The popular votes was a very near run thing.
That's why they say you stole the election.
Yeah, no, but the popular vote was a very near run thing in favor of Biden, but it was a very near run thing. And today, because of this war, America for the first time is facing inflation close to double digit.
Correct.
People are facing a problem in America. How they're going to vote is going to be a very tough challenge for Biden. And that is why they are looking at ways and means that put the cap on the oil, do this, do that. It is not for anybody else. It is for that election. That if he does that, there will be some money which will come into the American coffers, and they will be able to curb what is going on. But the problem, bigger problem that he faces more than the midterm election is the failing, you could say, how would I term it, that the world is looking at moving away from dollar trade.
Petrodollar,
Yeah.
de-dollarization.
See, the dollar that is doing well today, a lot of people say that Indian currency has gone down. When you look at it, your Indian currency is doing better as compared to the other
Yeah.
currencies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the other currencies are doing much worse as pertaining to the dollar. Why? Because the federal government has increased their rates 3.5% or something from zero. So if I have spare money, a lot of
Yeah,
these
not
central
over.
banks and others will buy the dollar bonds. कि भाई इंटरेस्ट अच्छा मिलेगा वहां पे. The other bonds are giving very less interest these days, so you'll get a better bond. So short term you will go and buy that. So that means nothing. India is doing rupee ruble trade with Russia. A lot of Middle East countries are permitting you to buy things in rupees.
Saudi, UAE, yes, sir.
Yeah, Qatar also, by the way. Okay. A lot of countries now are looking at, instead of Visa and MasterCard, accepting your
UPI.
Rupee card.
It's
Okay.
gone to
So,
France, sir.
yeah. So all these, when this happens, it implies, it directly impacts the value of the dollar. Dollar today has a value only because of the dollar trade, global trade in dollars. The day the global trade in dollar collapses, it is toilet paper. Dollar will be a toilet paper. That is his biggest worry. And the biggest support he gets is petrodollars. If,
That's how he regulates, sir.
yeah, and now suddenly he is find that OPEC and Russia have joined hands and they are showing two fingers to him. Because he is antagonized. OPEC is controlled by Saudi Arabia, and you say you will not deal with MBS. ठीक है, उसने अदनान खशोगी को मारा, तुमने साले कितने हजारों को मारा है इन मिडल ईस्ट, उसका कोई हिसाब नहीं है. ठीक है, एक को उसने कत्ल किया, ठीक है, किया है, बट
सर, जो 50 साल से मार रहा है लोगों को, उसके बारे में कोई नहीं बोलता था.
नहीं, बाकी बात ठीक है, चलो, मारा है, बहुत गंदा है, but at the larger level, there is a famous saying which Ronald Reagan had said when he was questioned about dictatorship in one country and dictatorship in another country, and he openly said, "Those are not my dictators; these are my dictators, so they are good chaps."
Hmm.
So why did Saudi Arabia become a bad chap for you? Now you don't control the OPEC, because not only Saudi Arabia, you have antagonized UAE also. क्या हुआ? What has happened? You thought you had controlled on the Saudi king. Today he has made him the prime minister. MBS is the prime minister. MBZ is crowned the emir in UAE. जो दो मेन पीपल हैं जो ओपेक को कंट्रोल करते हैं, आपने उन्हीं से गुंडागर्दी कर ली है. एंड अगेन यू आर टेलिंग आफ्टर दिस इज पास कि आई विल नॉट मीट एमबीएस. अच्छी बात है यार.
बड़े लोग हैं
टर्की
सर
से
वो.
तो नहीं, टर्की से तो बात करते हो. एर्दोगान भी तो कितनों को मार रहा है. तो
What he's doing to the East Turkestan population
yeah.
is,
So
it's ridiculous, sir.
now the basic issue is you have, this is the problem that he's facing, and I feel he's feeling the pinch now.
Sir.
He's feeling the pinch.
So the American deep state has decided India is not a ideological friend and is moving against us. Have no compromise with belief that you're under attack from the West.
Where is the doubt? There is no doubt. They don't want this current dispensation because they see that they are very strong.
Yeah.
The previous dispensation was like गाओ, आप बोल दो जो हुकुम. इन्होंने तो जिप खोल के दिखा दिया उनको कि थैंक यू, आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू लिसन टू यू. Why do you think the world global hunger index through the Germans brought it down? वो सब तो
Right
ठीक
here.
है, वो तो false index है, पता है. See, this is a way you create a perception.
Pressure. Hmm.
Okay. So you have this, and you will have the woke brigade and their paid media who will keep screaming. Wall Street Journal will write, and Washington
Washington
Post and New
Post,
York
New York
Times and
Times.
others will start writing. Why? They will say, then they will create a narrative that while the poor were going hungry, this government is anti-poor. They were sending food outside. Okay. But this will fall flat, because on the other side, the UN and the FAO are complimenting you the manner in which you have looked after your people. Okay. So there is no doubt in my mind that these people will do anything and everything to get a government in this country which is subservient to their needs.
This or any other country for that matter.
Yeah. So they are, if you, एशिया पैसिफिक बोलता रहता है, रीबैलेंस एशिया बोलते रहते हो, बट अफ्रीका एंड एशिया, एक्सेप्ट फॉर अ फ्यू कंट्रीज इन एशिया, अफ्रीका एंड एशिया हैज बीन यूज्ड एज अ रिसोर्स फॉर देम. दैट्स अबाउट ऑल.
True.
Where have they
Absolutely.
invested anything in Asia for infrastructure? If you open the UN infrastructure website, UNESCAP, और सिंस द 90s वो यूएनएसकैप के रोड्स एंड सब कुछ बने हुए हैं, फंडिंग करना है, ये करना है, ऐसे करेंगे. वेयर हैज द वर्ल्ड बैंक और इवन द एडीबी गिवन एनी फंडिंग? They have not given any funding. They're only going to use you. They want your market. That's it. They don't want you to get developed. They want that you buy their stuff.
वो है सर, बट एक चीज, आई मीन वो ये देयर आर, दीज आर आल्सो, आई मीन हाउ शुड आई पुट इट, दे आर लाइक वेपन्स. ये द वेस्ट इज ये यूज करते हैं लोगों को कंट्रोल करने के लिए.
करेक्ट. यू सी, हमें वेस्ट ने चीखा अनरिस्ट्रिक्टेड वॉरफेयर, चाइनीज ने लिख दिया है, ये कर दिया है. What people don't, our people, media also doesn't throw up, though there was a book which had come out, if I remember, in 2000. Yeah, I think 2005 or something. Full spectrum dominance. Americans
बात
and
बताया
the
था इनको.
West use the concept of full spectrum dominance. Full spectrum dominance means every sphere of your life, the way you live, will be controlled by them. They fund their NGOs, they fund your education institutions, they fund your media, they fund your intelligentsia, they fund your political parties, they fund your industries to disrupt your industries, to create strikes, they fund your unions. You name it, every level it is there. Now, current has started with FCRA for all the NGOs, auditing for all the NGOs. 60,000 of the NGOs did not apply again for FCRA, for extension of their home ministry's sanction for extension when it was finishing uh, end of last year.
last year.
60,000 NGOs. Just imagine how many NGOs and how many are working. Of course, we have forgotten Chanakya. We only, Chanakya himself, as part of Kutniti, had mentioned Tushnim warfare. Tushnim warfare is how you send out people there and manage to control the people there so that nobody rises up to control you, to be a threat to you. This was his advice to his king, to the Chakravarti,
हाँ जी.
कि भाई ये करना है. हम तुष्णिम वॉरफेयर भूल चुके हैं. वसुधैव कुटुंबकम, नॉनसेंस यार. Yes, the Chakravarti system that we had used to look at Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam in the sense that he was not sucking the other vassal states dry. They gave him a certain indemnity every year. He ensured peace and stability was maintained everywhere. It was his armies which ensured that everything was peace and stable, and you could do your economic activity, whatever trade you wanted with whoever you wanted. You did your trade, you grew up economically. But to make sure that they didn't become a threat to the Chakravarti, Tushnim warfare was one aspect of uh, Arthashastra, which Chanakya had written for the then Chakravarti, Chandragupta Maurya. Okay, people have forgotten that. We have forgotten that for a long time. And we are only looking at Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam कि हम कुछ नहीं करेंगे. फौज में भी सिखाया जाता है, यू कांट डिफेंड अ प्लेस बाय सिटिंग एट दैट प्लेस, बिकॉज जब लड़ाई होगी तो उसी जगह पे हो रही है, तो आपने डिफेंड क्या किया? अगर दिल्ली को डिफेंड करना है तो फौज दिल्ली में बैठ के थोड़ी डिफेंड कर रही है. यू हैव योर नदर्न बॉर्डर्स, यू हैव योर वेस्टर्न बॉर्डर्स, यू हैव योर पेनिनसुलर इंडिया वेयर योर नेवी इज देयर. व्हाई आर दे डिप्लॉयड सो फार अवे फ्रॉम द कैपिटल सिटी? यू डिफेंड अ प्लेस बाय गोइंग आउटसाइड. उसको कहते हैं प्रोवाइडिंग डेप्थ टू दैट प्लेस, कि लड़ाई होगी तो आप जिसको जगह को डिफेंड कर रहे हो वहां डिसरप्शन नहीं होगा. आप अपने देश को सिक्योर करना है, आप आपके देश को सिक्योर क्या देश में बैठ के करोगे? सवाल ही नहीं पैदा होता, क्योंकि जो डिसरप्शन होगा वो तो देश में होगा. आपको जरूरी नहीं है कि बाहर डिसरप्शन करना है, बट आपको खबर होनी चाहिए कि क्या करने वाला है, किसके साथ मिलने वाला है, क्या हो रहा है. अगर एक आदमी को उड़ा दो, लाइक the famous poem is there, for the want of a nail the empire was lost. कि घोड़े की एक नाल में एक नेल नहीं था तो पूरी जो राज्य थी, एम्पायर थी, वो खत्म हो गई. तो
एक बड़ा कनेक्शन स्टोरी, बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग स्टोरी है वो.
सो नोबडी, जो भी एग्जिस्टिंग पावर्स हैं, आपको क्यों तरक्की करने देंगे? आप तो उनको थ्रेट हो जाओगे, आप उनसे ज्यादा ताकतवर हो जाओगे, फिर
एक
आप
और चाइना
डिक्टेट
बन के
करोगे.
खड़े हो जाओगे.
हाँ, तो आप डिक्टेट करोगे. Even if you're like India, even if it rises, it's not going to be a revisionist or a revanchist one
नो.
like China, कि भाई नया सिस्टम खड़ा कर रहा है चाइना, पूरा सब कुछ रिवाइज कर देगा, रिवेंच कर देगा, नया सिस्टम खड़ा कर देगा. आप वो नहीं करने वाले, लेकिन वो सिस्टम अब आप कंट्रोल करोगे. जो एग्जिस्टिंग सिस्टम है वो आप कंट्रोल करोगे, नॉट द वेस्ट. टुडे ठीक है, हम चीख रहे हैं कि भाई हमारी इकोनॉमी थर्ड हाईएस्ट हो गई है. गुड, बट उसके इक्विवेलेंट आपको आईएमएफ में वोटिंग राइट है?
कुछ नहीं है
आपको
सर, कहीं पे
इक्विवेलेंट
भी.
वर्ल्ड बैंक में वोटिंग राइट है? आज भी जो आपसे पिछले इकोनॉमी है उनकी वोटिंग राइट्स ज्यादा है, उनके वोट्स ज्यादा काउंट होते हैं आपसे. क्यों? सो व्हाट इज द यूज ऑफ सेइंग कि मैं थर्ड हाईएस्ट इकोनॉमी हूं, आपको वोटिंग राइट्स नहीं मिले. चाइना इसीलिए नया सिस्टम खड़ा कर रहा है कि मैंने राइज किया, मुझे इक्विवेलेंट वोटिंग राइट नहीं दे रहा है वो, तो मैं नया सिस्टम खड़ा करूंगा जिसमें मेरा वोटिंग राइट होगा. क्यों नहीं दे रहा है? क्योंकि वो कंट्रोल करना चाहता है, और आप ताकतवर हो गए, यू विल कंट्रोल.
जी
खेल है भाई, हर एक अपना अपना
हाँ
अपने
सर,
अपने
गेम
तरीके
तो
से
है।
करता है।
जी जी।
चाइना ओवरटली कोवर्टली कर नहीं कर रहा है, पहले कोवर्टली कर रहा था, शी जिनपिंग के अंदर ओवरटली करने लगा। वेस्ट तो कोवर्टली कर ही रहा है, बहुत सालों से कर रहा है,
जी जी।
इट्स नथिंग न्यू।
सर, if German economy stagnates, will EU prevail or will member states start leaving? वो तो जा रहे हैं।
भाई EU was being existing because of Germany एंड सब्सिक्वेंटली फ्रांस जब आया था उसके बाद। अगर
एब्सोल्युटली
ये
ट्रू।
ही दो चले गए तो ईयू क्या रहा?
खत्म।
फक्कड़ है, किसी के पास और कुछ है ही नहीं।
EU का मैप
EU,
में ना एक स्टैंप लगा के कहीं पे रख लो, 25 साल के बाद अच्छा बिकेगा वो।
एंड दैट्स व्हाई आई कीप सेइंग
Run with।
दिस इज दिस विंटर, ये विंटर निकलने दो,
जी।
यूरोप का पता लग जाएगा कहां जा रहा है।
एक बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग कमेंट है सर, थोड़ा सा सस्पिशियस है, बट आई एम स्टिल गोना पुट इट अप। इंडिया गुलाम है। अच्छा जी, ठीक है, मुझे भी पता चल रहा है ये कहाँ से आ रहा है,
सब
बट एनीवेज।
जगह
फ्री बात करके क्या हासिल होगा? मुफ्त के पैसे बनाने की जगह
बांटने की
चलील,
जगह
बांटने की जगह
छानी।
चलील बनो। एंटी यूएसए यूके डालो। हंगर इंडेक्स में पैसे डाल के रैंक बढ़ाओ। कोई कंट्री कुछ नहीं करेगी मुफ्त बांटने से।
मुफ्त कोई नहीं बांटता,
कौन बांटता है भाई? कोई चीज मुफ्त की नहीं
कोई
होती।
मुफ्त नहीं बांटता, मैं इतना ही कहूंगा। इवन
वैसे
इंडिया
सर।
मुफ्त में कोई चीज जाता नहीं है। देयर नो फ्री लंचेस, let's be very clear,
एब्सोल्युटली सर,
there are no free
एब्सोल्युटली।
lunches anywhere.
Sir, last three questions, sir. Arun Saab says apparently Democrats are pushing Zelensky to launch an attack in the Kherson region before the midterm election. They desperately need something to show that all the money and arms,
बंदे ही
etc.
नहीं है उनके, तो डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ डिफेंस का ही बंदा कह रहा है यूएस के
I
कि
don't have.
बंदे ही नहीं बचे हैं यूक्रेन के पास। तो इफ विशेस वो हॉर्सेस बेगर्स वुड फ्लाई।
एक चीज सर, आई एम सॉरी, आई एम गोना ऐड सर, वन थिंग दैट हमको समझनी चाहिए कि ये जो अटैक हुआ था ना खार्किव में, most of these are mercenaries and these mercenaries come very expensive. Some of these guys charge $4,000-5,000 a day, so
यार
वो सस्टेन करना
इफ यू
बहुत मुश्किल
लुक
होता
एट
है।
इफ यू लुक एट द मैप, आई विल जस्ट टेल वन थिंग यार। जब से ये कह रहे हैं ना यूक्रेन का ऑफेंसिव हुआ, ये कर दिया वो कर दिया, उसके 2 दिन पहले से मैप देखो और
हार्डली
आज
एनीथिंग।
कल सुबह का मैप देख लेना, क्या अचीव किया है।
नथिंग।
देखो जो मर्सनरी आता है ना, वो मरने के लिए नहीं आता है, जो इस तरह की लड़ाई लड़ने आया है पैसे के लिए आया है। जहां तक वो लड़ सकता है लड़ेगा, बाद में वो भाग जाएगा वहां से। ही इज नॉट ए रेडिकलाइज्ड
आइडियोलॉजिकल।
टेररिस्ट,
हाँ जी, हाँ जी।
फिदायीन नहीं है वो, जिहाद के लिए नहीं आ रहा है वो। हाँ, इफ टर्की के थ्रू वो रिपोर्ट सही है, आईसिस वाले आ जाएंगे, देन द होल बैटल पैटर्न विल चेंज।
सर वो आ गए हैं, फोटोज आ गई हैं उनकी। They've
The
already
whole
come.
battle pattern will change once the radicalization of the Muslims in Europe starts. The whole battle pattern will change, and it will not be restricted to Ukraine and Russia. These people, Russians have also brought in their Tatars, the Cossacks, and the Chechen fighters. ओके, तो
70,000 of them.
उन्होंने ऑलरेडी अपने बंदे लेके आ गए हैं कि अगर ये इस्लामिक मिलिटेंट लेके आएंगे तो मेरे इस्लामिक फाइटर्स यहाँ तैयार खड़े हैं उनके लिए। यूरोप में कोई फाइटर तैयार खड़ा है? सांप को अगर सामने की तरफ डसते नहीं बना, वहां उसको खतरा है, तो एस्केप रूट देखता है। इसीलिए कहते हैं सांप, जहरीले सांप को अगर आप पकड़ने जाते हो तो डायरेक्ट मत पकड़ने, भगाना है घर से तो कोई रास्ता उसको छोड़ना है, वहां से वो निकल के चला जाएगा। ठीक है,
मैं वही सोच रहा था सर।
सिंपल चीज दादी कहती थी कि जिस तरह से जाना है वो दरवाजा खोल के दूसरे साइड से बाल्टी भर के पानी फेंक दो, पानी उस तरफ से जाएगा, पानी में सांप केवल तैर के जाएगा, जिधर पानी जा रहा है वो उधर से निकल जाएगा। निकलने के लिए रास्ता छोड़ो, सांप निकल जाएगा, नहीं तो डस लेगा तुमको।
Exactly what is going
अब
to happen now.
अब किधर जाएगा सांप, किधर जाएगा? रेडिकलाइजेशन किधर होगा? ईयू में होगा। किधर जाएगा सांप जो यहां आया है?
यूक्रेन में।
नहीं, यूक्रेन में सांप आया है, किधर जाएगा? उधर
नहीं
जाएगा।
वो अच्छा वापस उधर आएगा, थोड़ा सा क्रॉस क्रॉस ट्रैफिक भी होगा ना सर, थोड़ा बहुत।
नहीं नहीं, एक टैक्टिक्स उसका होता है, एक जगह वो रेस्ट एंड रिफिट के लिए हर वक्त रखता है, जहां वो कुछ नहीं करता। अब सोचने वाली बात है, रेस्ट एंड रिफिट किधर होगा?
हाँ।
ईस्टर्न यूक्रेन में, वेस्टर्न यूक्रेन में, और बाकी जंग कहां पे होगा? अगर यहां पे भी उसके जैसे फाइटर्स खड़े हैं तो इजी एरिया जहां है, तो जंग कहां होगा? यहां तो होगा। ये नहीं है कि छोड़ के जाएगा, लेकिन बाकी जगह भी तो जंग होगा। So EU has to take a call. That's why I say, when this war ends, what is in their larger interest? और नहीं करेंगे तो टूटेगा।
Thank you, Venki sir, for this contribution, and sir, comments for you. Educative session. Uh,
थैंक यू वेंकी सर।
uh, he sent a question which I need to take. General Rajiv sir, please share your thoughts on the way Israel is playing or positioned itself in this battle.
हाथ नहीं लगाया। Israel has not touched it with a barge pole. There are no weapons from Israel which are going there. They need it
रूमर
to
आया था,
count.
खत्म हो गया वो।
They need it here. They're a nation under threat. That is one nation in the world which is always at war. You never know when he'll get attacked by the Arabs.
बट सर इसका एक क्वेश्चन है, सॉरी आई एम गोइंग टू इंटरजेक्ट। ये जो इनका जो राइट विंग राइट सेक्टर जो इनका मूवमेंट है यूक्रेन में, इट इज सपोज्ड टू बी फंडेड बाय अ इजरायली चैप एक्चुअली। ही इज एन इजरायली बिलियनियर, वो बहुत पैसे डालता है उसके अंदर। सो देयर इज, आई मीन नॉट गवर्नमेंट टू गवर्नमेंट बट
I'm sure there may be Jews out there in the right wing.
बिकॉज यू नो एज जो
Ukrainian Jews होंगे।
वो राइट
Money is
विंग,
nothing.
या
Money means nothing. पैसा दे रहा है, ठीक है, दे रहा है। वो पैसे जा रहे होंगे जिस किसी के साथ लड़ने के लिए, जो भी लड़ना है उनके साथ लड़ने के लिए। बट हैज एनी इक्विपमेंट गॉन फ्रॉम इजराइल? आई डोंट थिंक so.
नो
Nor will
नो
Israel give.
नो
And
नो नो।
Israel doesn't have the capacity. I've had interactions in my service with the Israeli defense secretary and their head of their R&D and others. They're always looking at joining up with India. And if there's a joint development of system with India, then the economy of scales comes into place,
या साइज,
because they don't have a bigger market. The market is available here, and then from here it can be exported. Primarily because in the world today, any equipment that is bought by the Indian services, whether it be the army, the navy, or the air force, is blindly bought by the others, because the kind of detailed and in-depth trials that you go through before you do the final selection, shortlist and selection, I don't think any other country in the world goes through that much. So there are a lot of platforms. The moment you buy, there are a lot of countries which start buying those platforms. So that is why they were very keen that if we do a joint selection and an Indian army, whether it be the army, the navy, or the air force, picks it up, then they were very sanguine that they will be able to sell it to a lot of countries in the region.
दैट्स
Economy
ट्रू,
of scale. So I
दैट्स ट्रू।
don't think they will, firstly, as a policy, they would not send it out there, because they need it for their own armed forces, and they need to keep their stocks to be able to fight, because they've learned a bitter lesson even in the Yom Kippur war, and after that
Yom
also
Kippur and
they need to be
recent
ready.
event, yeah,
Yeah,
recent
yeah.
event.
Even now, when they went in against Hamas in Lebanon, Hezbollah in I stand corrected, Hezbollah in
Yes,
Lebanon, and
Abdullah.
so I don't think they've touched them with a barge pole.
Sir, thank you so much. This has been a nice, lovely session. And Mr. Arun, thank you so much for the name. This is what I was looking at. Kolomoisky is his name, sir. He's the guy who's basically funded Zelensky's election campaign and this thing. I was reading an article about this. It's quite funny that, we've kind of misinterpreted the whole denazification as the same guys in Germany. There's a huge difference between them, because this particular thing is directed towards the Russians. So the definition actually kind of changes. So the religion kind of
Well,
doesn't come into the picture. It's more ethnic tensions rather than religious.
yes, of course. Uh, he would be with the American group and supported. They have a lot of links with CIA and
Uh,
the Jews in America. Okay, so they have very close links with them. So I'm not surprised that some billionaire, Jewish billionaire, is funding Zelensky. Like I said earlier, the Ukraine has that big problem.
yeah, yeah, too.
It is something like Palestine and Israel. Israel used to be there, and then the Palestinians came. वो different है, Arabs हो गए हैं वो, but they belong to the same place, but they can't see eye to eye. So now you have Western Ukrainians who are Catholics, Eastern Ukrainians who are ethnic Orthodox Russian, and you have these regions where you have Russians. And it all began when they decided to stop Russian as one of the national languages.
Yeah,
That's the start point.
that's the start point.
Something like what Sri Lanka said, Tamil will not be one of their national languages.
Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, so many
Yeah,
examples.
yeah. So it
So
happened from there only. And same, like you rightly pointed out, Bangladesh and East Pakistan, erstwhile East Pakistan
same,
and
same,
West
same. Yes,
Pakistan, you don't
yes.
see eye to eye. But at least there was a gap. There was a whole country in between. वहां तो एक नदी है,
Hmm.
and Kiev is across both sides.
Both sides, correct, sir.
But
He was.
just imagine the travesty of fate. The history of Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine starts from Kiev, Kievan
Yeah,
Rus,
yeah.
9th century. From there it starts, their history. It's a common history, common culture. It's a different issue that Western side has. But the funny part is the Eastern part is the one which is industrialized. The Western part is more of a breadbasket, agricultural.
Agriculture is also in the south a little bit, ना? Kherson में भी काफी है इनका. The
Hey, but
field.
Kherson is west of Dnipro, na?
Yeah, correct. Technically, yes.
Kherson is not east of Dnipro.
Yes,
East of
correct.
Dnipro is heavily industrialized.
Correct,
West
correct,
of
correct,
Dnipro, it is not that the industries are not there. They are there, but traditionally that has been the breadbasket of Ukraine.
correct, sir.
And that is the place from where they supply a whole lot of wheat and all the food materials, vegetable oils and everything. That is the place from where it all goes,
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
which has been
Right, sir.
disrupted now.
This has been a great discussion. We've gone through 1 hour and 47 minutes. I'm sure all the viewers have also enjoyed your views, and I'm getting so many comments even now. Great discussion. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. This has been actually very
Most welcome.
educative. We've covered a
Yeah.
good, large, अच्छा बड़ा स्पेक्ट्रम हमने कवर करा है. I mean, of course, हिंदी थोड़ा सा टाइम लगेगा, guys. So those of you who are expecting पूरा हिंदी, एक आधा हफ्ता दे दो यार.
पूरा हिंदी चाहिए मैं कर सकता हूँ, नाम पे
पूरा,
मत जाना।
हाँ, हाँ. तो वो थोड़ा बहुत करेंगे धीरे धीरे करके, बिकॉज
नहीं,
हैबिट बना
लोगों
के
को,
मूव
दर्शकों को
फॉरवर्ड.
बता रहा हूँ कि नाम पे मत जाना, पूरा हिंदी में कर सकता हूँ। मैं
हाँ सर, का हिंदी
पला
काफी
बड़ा
स्ट्रांग है.
मध्य प्रदेश में हूँ, सो हिंदी की कोई समस्या नहीं है।
अच्छा, चलो सर. Great, sir. Next week, guys, stay tuned. I will tell you all for when for China. And before I sign off, please do hit the like button. It helps me reach a larger audience, guys. That is very critical for me to grow. As all of you, some of you guys who are there with me on the WhatsApp group, any of you want to join, please do send me a mail on the mail ID which is mentioned in my channel with a way for me to authenticate who you are. I've said this in multiple episodes. I'm going to say it now. I had a few requests, not few, multiple requests from some very unrequired characters, if I may. So, please do send in your identification. We've got a very good group who discusses geopolitics and stuff like that very, very frequently. As a matter of fact, there's some discussion of the other on through the day in that group, because there are people who are from all across the world. So they live in different time zones, and there's stuff that they're sharing all the time. So thank you so much, all of you guys. Hit the like button, hit the check your subscription, bell icon, and yes, don't forget, if you can, do support the Dev Talks effort. check out my website www.thedeftalks.com. Thank you, sir, once again for joining. Till next time.
Thank you for giving me the platform to share my
Jai Hind.
views. Thank you. Jai Hind.